of microfinancing, where we create small groups, saving groups, self-help groups, and they are being given hefty subsidies. Originally in the Bangladesh plan, there was no question of giving in these hefty subsidies to these microfinance institutions.
They are absolutely out of the government completely.
Out of the government. Not only that, but they were not charging the kind of rates of interest they charge in India. In India, 24 to 35% is the normal rate of interest that the microfinance institutions charge. There were cases where these microfinance institutions have persecuted farmers to drive them to suicide. And all the same, we think that microfinance is a big institution. I have suggested, for example, I'm not a defender of money lenders, but I think they have played an important enough role, and we should create a specific provision by which all money lenders can be registered. You can resurrect the Usurious Loans Act and fix a maximum of 4% on the rate of interest. And at that time, in the days of the British, there was a very important provision called Dam Dupat. That is, if a farmer took the loan, the total interest accumulation could never exceed the amount of capital.
So if it's 100 rupees taken, not more than 200 rupees capital.
Not more than 200 rupees had to be repaid. That is 100 rupees capital and 100 rupees interest.
Maximum.
I think if that is done, that would have been a great thing even in this India. Unfortunately, after independence, we appear to be going backwards. You may remember that Sir Chotu Ram, the great farmer leader of Haryana, he was the one who passed the Land Alienation Act, under which no money lender could confiscate or take away the land of the farmers. Lala Lajpat Rai, the great hero leader, he was the one who opposed it. I wonder if the whole national leadership and the national movement before independence had a close contact with the farmers. I tend to feel that it was essentially an urban traders movement.
So I think this, unfortunately, the disconnect between the top leadership of the country and the farmers' real problems is proving to be really fatal to the farming sector and also forcing farmers to commit suicide. So I'm quite intrigued by the fact that you are having such a fantastic job overseas. You are living, we could have continued to live a very cozy life because you are in a multilateral agency. You chose to come back to your roots, and not only that, but you not just confined yourself to your own farmland, but you went outside, started talking to farmers about the problem. How did this happen?
One reason is, I started as a lecturer in economics, got into the All India services. But I always felt even at that time that some people get into the services because they are lucky. And there were a vast majority like me who get into the services because they are unlucky. I was one of the unlucky ones. And later on, when I got the opportunity, I moved on to the United Nations and became the head of the informatics division there. As such, I was also a member of the United Nations Second Development Decade Committee, which is the equivalent of United Nations Planning Commission. Now, visiting different poor countries, the first thing that struck me was those leaders in the government of the developing countries were really not interested in the development of their rural areas and hinterland. For example, once I talked to the communications minister of Niger and told him that you ought to have better connections with the capital and the other villages. He said, Mr. Joshi, tell us how to have closer contacts with Paris. Our internal problem we will take care of. The typical attitude of the developing country governments in those days was, you don't tell us what we do within our country.
Because passport to heaven.
They were more keen on having closer contacts with the old imperial metropolitan countries. And another thing that I noticed was that in most capitals, there was hardly anything that could distinguish those capitals from New York or from Tokyo. Well, if you moved away from there for just about 50 kilometers, came to the first village, then you saw stark poverty, literacy, illiteracy, disease. And what was the dividing line? That was the question I asked myself. In those days, I wrote also something. I tried to prepare my hypothesis for the doctorate on this subject. And then the idea came to me that books will never teach me anything. If this is the situation in the third world countries, then the biggest culprit of this type is my own country. And the only way I can seriously learn Gautam Buddha like is to leave the job, go back to India, become a farmer.
Yeah.
I came back to India, became a farmer, a dryland farmer.
Oh.
Because then I was told that in Maharashtra, the irrigated farmers are relatively better off. And I started working. And I think I had the advantage of being an outsider.
Where was this place? Where did you start your farming?
I purchased a land without irrigation facilities near Chakan or near Pune.
Okay.
That was some kind of an obligation on me, because when I made the family shift, there were some serious problems. I had 2 daughters, and both of them had done their entire education in French, German and Latin.
Oh.
And they had to switch back to Hindi, Marathi and English. That was going to be very difficult for them. But we found a school in Pune,
Okay.
where this was possible. They could at least continue with French. And therefore, the first camp was made in Pune, and about 40 or 50 kilometers from that, by sort of an accidental chance, I came across a farmer whose land was about to be auctioned because he was not able to repay the loan.
Oh.
What I did was paid the first installment of whatever was to be paid, paid the second installment, paid the third installment, and then I found that he was just not getting out. For some time I thought he was really fooling me. And then when I actually stood on his field and found that he was really not able to repay, then I said, this is the place where I should start my work. I knew that this kind of losing agriculture was facing me, but I had got some money at that time because I had resigned from the United Nations, taken my GPF with me, and that entire GPF money I sunk in finding out water.
So your provident fund, entire earning you put it there?
Entire GPF was put there, but I was not lucky. Some more other people are luckier. And then we started doing the agriculture. I took only one care. I wrote the accounts of my agriculture every day.
Oh.
And since I was an informatic expert, I prepared a specialized D-based software for that.
Oh.
And since every paisa account was written, one day it was my wife who was alive at that time who said, please do me a favor. Don't put any money into that agriculture. Whatever we have, we'll be able to live happily if you only don't spend more money on the agriculture. It took me this and some other experiences to come to know that agriculture is actually a losing proposition.
And this was a very scientific accounting of that.
Accounting. And there was something else. Like many other people, I didn't have very clear ideas about what I am supposed to do. So like many leaders, social workers, etc., I was running a literacy class in my village. And one day I was struck by the sheer avidity with which some of the young girls were learning to write. And next day my daughter invited me to a function in her school, which was St. Joseph near Andhra, near Aund. And I found it that social fete of the students. There were games where you shot down balloons, there were all kinds of games being played. And the students were just throwing off 10 rupee notes like anything. Even in those days, I am talking of 1980, 81. And the thought came to me, which is the real India? Was it the India that I saw yesterday night, or is this the real India? That's where for the first time the idea that these are two separate countries. As I saw the difference between Switzerland and India, now I saw the difference between Pune's India and Ambedkar's India, and coined the words India and Bharat at that time, which became so popular. I wish I had taken charge at least 1 paisa for every use.
I know, you should have registered it as a
copyright. I would have become a rich man.
I know, but this is something not I would call a revolution, but an evolution in your mind, which you actually saw by your own experiences, and in fact that's how you became. You left all that and you started fighting for the cause of the farmers. What led you to form a political party? Because your political party is a very interesting name.
I didn't form the political party. It took me again a long evolution. At that particular time in Maharashtra, the general feeling amongst the farmers was that these leaders come, give us some promises, contest elections, become MLAs and MPs and go away. I had to overcome yet another handicap. I am a Joshi, which means a Brahmin. And generally the belief amongst farmers is that Brahmins are their caste enemies. It's they who have really exploited them. I had to take certain positions and make it clear that under no circumstances will I ever join any party. But on the other hand, I made an offer to all the party people. You remain in your own parties, you continue to have your views according to your party. Just when it comes to agricultural prices, stand by us. No party obliged. And therefore later on, at a particularly mature stage, I asked myself the question, I am teaching the farmers the lesson in freedom. What I am telling them is actually that if you are people who sow one seed and produce 1,000 grains, it's only taken away somewhere in between the farm and the market. If I taught this lesson of freedom, it is at that point of time that I turned an anti-socialist. And if I started doing, I must give this message to urban people also. At that time, I happened to meet Masani, who was taking a lot of interest, Minu Masani, lot of interest in my movements. He called me once, he came to meet some of me in jail. And it was all a new thing for him. When I told him that, do you know that the sugar that you get on your ration card becomes possible because the farmer is expected to give 2/3 of his sugar as levy sugar at half the price. He said, is that true? This also was an entire revelation for him. Then after some time, we faced our own problems. In the first cotton agitation, thousands of farmers went to jail.
That is a very historic event.
1980, thousands of farmers. We already had 35 farmers shot down in police firing by that time. And in order to face these police inquiries, etc., we found that we always had to go to the Home Minister. Shankar Rao Chavan was the Chief Minister at that time, and say, why don't you give a condonation of all these cases? They said, if I have to go and ask for relief for the people who get arrested, from people who fight elections and get elected, then there is some importance in having a political party of one's own. Now that was a difficult transition. And even today, let me say very honestly, I am not quite sure if that was the right decision. If I had not formed a political party, I think I can be reasonably sure that I would have gone in the history books as a kind of Kisan Mahatma. Having joined political party, I have sort of downgraded myself, and I'm very often classed with people like other politicians. But it happened, and when I started working for the party, now we have enormous literature prepared which puts the whole blame of Indian poverty, farmers' deaths, farmers' indebtedness on Nehru and his socialistic misadventure. It's a very bitter thing to say, but that's a fact. In fact, one of the books that I wrote was What Went Wrong with India? What Went Wrong with India's Independence? WWWII. And one of the things I have said there is that if people, at the time of the 50th anniversary of independence, if people think that things have gone wrong after independence, if the dream of Bhagat Singh has not been fulfilled, then it is erroneous to presume that the entire rot started only after independence. There must be some roots within the independence movement itself which must have ultimately brought into this consequence. So we have now a whole philosophy, and I can say ours is the only party apart from the old Marxist party which has a world view which connects to the latest small problem of even onion prices.
Yeah. In fact, you also welcomed the WTO at a time when everybody was very fashionable to oppose WTO. But do you think now, with the problem that we're facing in the world, USA going through recession, that Doha round will ever be completed, or looks like that our dream of freeing agriculture through that will just be lost?
I will take two positions on this subject. Number one, Doha round is failing, and the position of the Europeans and the Americans has become stronger because of the global warming. Today they can say with greater strength that we need to keep a good part of our country green, and if we have to keep it green, then we will have to keep agriculture alive. Their argument for domestic support will have become stronger. The second argument that I would make is that we have really no right to complain about it. Before addressing their positive subsidies, our government should really try and demolish the negative subsidies in our country. Yeah, if America gives 35% positive subsidies, and our government admits to have given something like 80% as negative subsidy.
That is the farmer's contribution to the society, 80% negative subsidy. The farmers have contributed. Because
that's the level of taxation on farmers. It's a transaction tax on farmers.
In fact, to that extent, you can generally say farmers have contributed.
Farmers have. That's why on the question of loan waiver, my point is that all loans, agricultural loans, are unlawful and immoral. Unlawful because the government which gave the loans made the return of the loans impossible, which frustrates the contract, and under Contract Act it becomes invalid.
Ab initio void.
Ab initio void. Similarly, they are immoral because the amount that the farmers pay to the government by way of this loss is something like at least 15 times the amount that the farmers owe to the government. In my report to Atal Bihari Vajpayee on WTO, I had calculated that between 1980 and 2000, the farmers had lost 300,000 crores because of it. And the loan, even according to Radhakrishnan's report, is just 1,30,000. What are they talking about when they cut the loan waiver? They are illegal, immoral, and worst thing that's happening is we hope that with the globalization, we'll have something like a futures market. We'll be able to get better prices. Farmers will be able to get a better share of the consumer prices. But if P. Chidambaram is now deliberately trying to destroy the commodity exchange, I think we are going to come to a time where the next revolution, which they say we want second green revolution, is likely to turn more red than green.
I hope that. But one thing I always noticed is, though you are a founder of a party called Bharat Swatantra Paksha, Bharat Swatantra Party, but you keep carrying on your heart a Shetkari Sangatna, which is a non-political party. So I know where your heart really lies. Your heart is there where the farmer's interest is there. And that's what I think has made you so popular among the farmers. So I'm sure one day you will be able to realize your dream in the heart, and that becomes reality soon.
There's another reason for that. Indira Gandhi amended the preamble to the Constitution to introduce the word socialism.
Yeah.
With the result that every party in formation has to swear that it believes in the tenet of socialism, which I don't. I consider that socialism was the greatest crime against humanity ever. And we have still not, we are in the court, and we are trying to get the electoral symbol of the old Swatantra Party, which was a blue star.
Yeah.
Still we haven't got it, and therefore I continue to carry this badge. There again there is a history. Most of the southern farm movements carry some green towel or a green badge. In Maharashtra it's very difficult to work with a green badge if we give the general mindset. And therefore we deliberately chose that our movement is more like the economistic movement led by the left party, and therefore deliberately chose the red color. which every farmer in Maharashtra carries.
But also I have noticed one thing, that your party's symbol is aeroplane. So I think we have passed, hopefully, we'll pass a time from bullock cart to aeroplane, and that could be the farmer's real dream. I hope that becomes true, so that the farmers really get a passage to travel by that plane and travel to really a place where he really deserves to be. So thank you very much, Mr. Joshi, for talking to us.
It was
I think
pleasure.
your real dream would be fulfilled when we'll see the farmers really become millionaires, and I hope that happens soon. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much, viewers, for joining in this program in which we're talking to Mr. Sharad Joshi, a member of parliament, a farmers leader, a person who sacrificed his personal life to come back and work for his countrymen. Thank you very much for joining this program. Please join us next week for another episode, another program in which we'll talk to another distinguished personality on an issue concerning you and me. Bye-bye. Good night.